Mike and Egypt. A Love Story by Barron Darby. For anyone who has ever looked across a crowded room and heard the quiet, astonishing voice that says, "That one." And for anyone who has ever been told to walk past the right person because the timing felt wrong, this is for you. If you already know Egypt and Mike, if you have watched them stroll into an open house on Married to Real Estate, her clipboard in hand, his tape measure clipped to a tool belt, both of them cracking each other up on camera. Welcome. This book is for you. You will recognize Kendall and Harper. You will recognize the Atlanta skyline, the sawdust on his jeans, the HGTV after dark kind of scenes that make it past the editing room. You already love them, and you have come here to love them a little more completely, to see the inner weather behind the exterior we all know. If you have never heard of them, if this is the first page on which you have ever met this couple, welcome to. You do not need the show to understand the book. You need only the question the book is answering, which is a question every person who has ever tried to love another person already carries in their chest. The question is this: can two souls who came to the altar carrying different losses actually build something that outlasts the losses? Can a girl from Philadelphia, who had sworn off men at 27, and a young man from the music industry who had already been married once and was scared to ever do it again, find their way to each other on purpose, and then keep finding their way through years and miscarriages and canceled weddings and a Morocco hillside and a kitchen island during a pandemic, back to each other? If that question interests you, you are in the right place. A note on what follows. This is a love story about two real people, drawn from publicly available material, podcasts they have sat down for, interviews they have given, social media they have chosen to share, scenes from a television show on which they play themselves. Where the public record offers a specific, I have used it. Where the interior is quiet, I have dramatized carefully. What a thoughtful reader might imagine a man or a woman in that moment to be feeling. I have invented no scandal. I have invented no infidelity. I have invented no abuse. Where I could not know, I have softened. Where the couple has entrusted us with a piece of their story in public, I have tried to carry it the way a good pallbearer carries a loved one, level, steady, with two hands. These are not strangers. They are a family. Treat them as you would want your own story treated if a stranger were writing it down. Now, let us begin where every good love story begins, in the middle of the fight, at the moment the fight stops. Prologue. Atlas Mountains, 2019. She is 3.5 months pregnant and does not know it yet. The hill is steep, steeper than the guide implied when he sold them on the hike at the hotel that morning, steeper than the photos suggested in the brochure in the lobby. Egypt is in black leggings and trail shoes she bought the week before, and her lungs are not in it. Her thighs are not in it. A part of her is already composing the sentence she is going to use on her husband when she finally catches up to him at the top of this ridge, and the sentence, more or less, is, "We don't do this," from Philly and Broad. She doubles over at a pile of red stones, sucks in the thin air, tastes the dust, and laughs. Above her, Mike has stopped. He is watching her with that expression he has worn for 13 years now, the mild, unbothered amusement of a man who knows he has already won the argument. He has on a black t-shirt and the kind of pants that have cargo pockets, which, in her private opinion, he wears too often. He lifts the water bottle in his hand like a toast. "Come on, baby," he says. "It is not that bad." "It is that bad," she says into the stones. "You got me climbing Atlas Mountain." "We do not climb. We climb now." He waits. He does not rush down to her. He knows her well enough not to. Rushing with Egypt reads as pity. Pity with Egypt reads as an invitation for a fight she does not want to have on a hillside in Morocco. So he waits. She spits into the dirt, rinses her mouth with her water bottle, and drags herself up the next 10 yards on her own power, because her mother did not raise a woman who had to be carried. When she reaches him, she puts her forehead on his chest for a second, and then lifts it and looks him dead in the face. "Baby," she says, "if we were at the altar right now, if the pastor was up there this second with the book open and the music cued, would you say yes?" He does not take the breath a careful man would take. He does not pretend to think it over. He has been waiting 13 years for this question to be asked out loud, and his answer arrives without traffic. "Hell yeah," he says. "That is what I am talking about." He tips her chin up with one finger, because he knows she is not done, because he knows the way her questions arrive in sets. "What about you?" he says. "What about me?" "I choose you," she says, "all day, every day. I do not care who is up in here. It is going to be you. You never have to doubt that." On the hillside, she means every word. She means it from the part of her that has sat through marriage counseling and a canceled wedding and a swine flu year that looked, for a minute, like God himself was saying not yet. She means it from the part of her that gave up. She means it from the part of her that held Kendall as a baby and thought, "This is enough. This is all he is going to give me," and made her peace with that. She does not know, not yet, that Harper is already inside her body at this very moment, already listening to the wind come across the Atlas Range, already 3.5 months into the life God had in mind when Egypt and Mike were sitting in separate rooms 20 years ago, each of them sure they did not need anyone. She will find out 3 weeks from now, at a doctor's office in Atlanta, when the technician moves the wand across her belly and says, "Oh," in the voice technicians use when they are about to change your life. Kendall had been telling people at school for months. Kendall, 5 years old, had been telling the teacher at pickup that Mommy was having a baby, and the teacher had smiled and said, "Congratulations," to Egypt in the parking lot. And Egypt had gone home and said, "Mike, Kendall is telling her teacher I am pregnant. Kids say the most random things." And Mike had laughed. And then 3 weeks later, they were in a doctor's office and the doctor was not laughing. But that is 3 weeks away. Right now, on the hillside, Egypt only knows the wind is warm and her legs are burning, and the husband in front of her is saying, "Hell yeah," with his chest out. And she laughs, and she slides her hand into the hand she has been sliding her hand into since she was 27 years old, and they keep climbing. This is the story of how they got to that hill. Part 1. Chapter 1. Egypt, the girl who wouldn't date a DJ. The receptionist at the little jazz station at Temple University did not want to be on the radio. She wanted to be a lawyer. That is worth saying out loud, because the voice you have heard on HGTV, and before that on WPHI and WUSL and the rest of the Philadelphia dial, and before that on Z100 in New York. That voice, the one that can warm a whole room without ever seeming to reach for the warmth. That voice was supposed to be cross-examining somebody in a courtroom in Center City by now. It was the production director at the jazz station who would not let that stand. He looked at her in the lobby, sliding mail into boxes, and he said, "Come in here. I need you to voice some commercials. I need you to climb out of that shell, young lady. You can talk to the whole city in this little box, and nobody has to look at you. The walls are egg crates. Nobody is going to be staring. And the receptionist, who was shy, and who was black, and who was 17 or 19, or whatever age she was when shy girls are still deciding what to believe about themselves, let him walk her into the booth. That is how it started. Egg crates on the wall, a mic at her face, and a production director who refused to believe her when she said she could not talk to people. She had been raised in Philadelphia, which means she had been raised inside a particular frequency. Philly girls grow up hearing Patty and Teddy Pendergrass on the kitchen radio. Philly girls grow up knowing which SEPTA bus will leave you and which corner store has the good pretzel. Philly girls understand weather. They understand stoops. They understand that a man who cannot look you in the face is a man who is lying to you. They understand cheesesteaks. And they understand that when somebody tells you they are a music producer, you are supposed to smile politely and keep walking. In the family she came from, people had been married 30, 40, 50 years. People had been married long enough to have forgotten what they were even mad about the first time they got mad. In her family, love was something you got up and made work, the way her grandmother got up and made breakfast. 2 of her great-grandmothers were still alive. They would come to her wedding one day and stand next to each other at 102 and 105 years old, holding each other up, 5 generations of women staring at her in a white dress, and she would look at the 2 of them and understand exactly why marriage was not a sprint. The only rule she made for herself, when she started making rules, was the one that applied to the business she had accidentally stumbled into. I do not date men in the industry. That was the rule. She wrote it on the inside of her head in capital letters. In the radio business, in the DJ business, in the A&R business, in the going to the club and being seen business, you either dated one of the men or you did not. And the women who did ended up with their names compared in rooms they were not in. And Egypt was many things, but she was not going to be anybody's comparative notes. They are not going to say they had me, she told her girlfriends, and she meant it the way you mean a verse you have sung in church 1,000 times. Before the rule, before the radio, before any of it, there was a kitchen in Philadelphia with a woman at the stove who had been married 51 years, Egypt's grandmother. The woman ran a house the way some women run empires, hands on everything, eyes on everything, a pot on every burner, a grandchild at her hip. Egypt had sat at that kitchen table since she was old enough to hold a spoon. She had watched her grandmother, in 51 years of marriage, complain about her grandfather exactly the way a woman complains about a husband she intends to keep. And the grandmother had a line. She would say it when one of the women in the family came to her with a hurt feeling. She would say it with a spatula in her hand, without looking up from the skillet. "Baby," she would say, "you don't fall out of love. You stop doing the things that kept you in it." It would take Egypt years to understand that the sentence was not a warning. It was a recipe. It was her grandmother telling her, ahead of time, what the work was before the work showed up. And the work was showing up all around her. Her parents, 40 years married by the time Egypt graduated, still in the same row house in West Philly, still eating dinner at the same table, still arguing about the same things, still choosing each other every morning. Her aunts at 30 years, her uncles at 35, a cousin who had just hit the big 15 with a Monday cake on a Tuesday. Egypt had grown up inside a kind of love that was not theoretical. It was in the walls. You could smell it in the kitchen on Sunday, which is what made the heartbreak, when it came for her in her mid-20s, land so specifically. She had come out of a relationship that had hurt her. She does not, in public, say more than that, and there is no reason for this book to say more than she has said. What she has allowed the world to know is that the relationship before Mike had made her feel small in a way she had promised herself, after the dust settled, never to let anyone make her feel again. She had walked out of it the way a woman raised by long marriages walks out of something that did not live up to the lineage she had been handed. She had walked out of it grieving, but not broken. Her grandmother's sentence had gone with her. If you don't fall out of love, you stop doing the things that kept you in it, which means love is a set of habits, which means a woman can get back to loving again by getting back to those habits, starting with the one habit that comes first. You have to love yourself on purpose. So she did the thing women do after a certain kind of heartbreak. She did not cut her hair. She did not dye her hair. She did not run off and get a tattoo. She went into the gym. She started cooking for herself. She prayed, which for Egypt means she had conversations out loud in rooms by herself and waited to see how the rooms answered. She read. She got quiet. For 2 years, she did not date a single man, and she did not sleep with a single man, and she did not miss either particularly. And if you had asked her during that stretch what she was doing with her life, she would have told you she was falling in love with herself. She would not have been kidding. I was non-sexual, she would tell people years later, laughing. That should be a whole classification. Put me down, non-sexual. She was, in those 2 years, becoming the woman God was going to hand to Mike. She did not know that at the time. You never do. At the time, she was 27. She was building her radio career. She was running into the ocean at 7 in the morning because her pastor had told her once that cold water was prayer without words. She was reading her scripture out of the leather study Bible her grandmother had pressed into her hands at 15 with the line we still quote around Christmas, "Baby, God ain't finished with you." And she was, on occasion, at the Powerhouse concert at Madison Square Garden in a headset and a hand mic, emceeing for 20,000 people, pretending in front of all of them that she was not shy. The Mecca shirt argument would not happen for another 17 years. The blockbuster nights would not happen for another 6 months. The canceled wedding and the swine flu would not happen for another 10. On the night in question, she was walking up a flight of stairs from the stage to the VIP section of a New York concert venue, and a man she had never seen before was standing at the top of those stairs, and he was looking at her with the expression of a man who had just heard something nobody else in the room could hear. She saw him. She clocked the expression. She thought, and she remembers this clearly, word for word, the way women remember the sentences their own head said to them in moments they could not yet name. "Oh, that's a cutie pie. Keep moving, girl. Keep moving." And she kept moving. You have to understand this about Egypt. She keeps moving. Chapter 2. Mike, the man with no role model. The first thing you should know about Mike is that he did not grow up with a blueprint, not the physical kind. He has been sketching houses on napkins and the backs of receipts since he was old enough to know what a napkin was, and he has been laying tile and hanging drywall and framing walls since he was a teenager on a construction site in the Northeast, learning from men who did not have the vocabulary for what they were teaching him, but had the hands for it. That kind of blueprint he had. That kind came easy. The kind he did not have was the other one, the one where a boy gets to watch a man up close for a long time being a husband. Being a husband is not being a father. Being a husband is not being a provider. Being a husband is not being the guy who works a double so the lights stay on. Being a husband is a specific, daily, weather-resistant act of showing up for the particular woman you happen to be married to, in the particular mood she happens to be in that Tuesday, and nobody in Mike's childhood ever modeled it in his sight for long enough for him to learn it by watching. He would say so later. He would sit on a podcast and say it out loud. I never had a male role model. I had tools. I had hands. I had a work ethic. I did not have a husband to study. What he did have was a mother, a black mother raising a black son by herself, which is a specific category of woman, which is a specific category of childhood, which produces, in the men it produces, a specific flavor of tenderness. She worked. She worked more than one job. She came home late and made food anyway, and checked homework anyway, and sat on the edge of his bed for 5 minutes anyway. And when she was too tired to do any of that, she would still, before she went to sleep, come into his room and put her hand on his forehead for a second and leave, and Mike would lie there, 8 or 10 or 12 years old, and hear the weight of her whole day in the way her palm felt. She was not teaching him how to be a husband. She did not know how to teach him that. She was teaching him, without ever naming the lesson, what showing up looks like. He would carry that lesson into every marriage he ever had. First one and second one, and the only one that would matter. Showing up is not loud. Showing up is a palm on a forehead at the end of a 16-hour day. So he did the thing boys with no role model sometimes do. He guessed. He got married the first time. Young, too young, for reasons he is still respectful about in public. And he came out of it with the kind of bruise a man comes out of a first marriage with, which is the bruise of realizing that love, on top of everything else you thought it was, is a skill set. It is not just a feeling. It is techniques. It is habits. It is the small, unsexy work of learning how somebody needs to be listened to, what makes them feel chosen, what flattens them, what lights them up. None of that had been in the toolbox he had been handed at 17. The first marriage taught him, in the hardest way a first marriage can teach a young man, that wanting to be a good husband and being a good husband are not the same thing. Wanting is a feeling. Being is a practice. The practice had to be learned. He had not learned it in time, and the first marriage had paid the price for his not yet, and he was grown enough by the time it ended to know that the person who had married him too young had deserved a better version of him than he had been able to give. He does not, to this day, say an unkind word about her. He will not let his boys say an unkind word about her. That is the grace in him. And so the first marriage had to go, and it did. And he was 26 or 27 years old, living in the kind of apartment a young divorced man lives in. DJing at night, working construction during the day, and he had made himself a rule too. His rule, unlike Egypt's, had nothing to do with the industry. His rule was, until I am right with me, I am not right for anybody. He said it to himself, and he meant it. He was not going to start over with a woman while the paperwork was still wet. He was not going to drag somebody into his unsorted interior. He was going to sit in it. He was going to work. He worked. He built. He was always building. At a time when most men his age were clubbing on Saturdays and sleeping it off on Sundays, Mike was on a roof in Queens replacing shingles, or in an apartment in Jersey hanging new cabinetry, or back at the crib at 1 a.m. with a sketch pad trying to figure out why the load-bearing wall he had drawn would not actually bear load. His DJ career was real. He was DJ Fidelf to the people who knew him from the booth, a name a decade deep in the game. Hot 97 cats respected him without him ever having to be one of them. The Mixtape Brothers knew his cuts. The Queens and Jersey Club promoters knew which number to call when they needed a set that was going to move. But the DJ career was not his thesis. His thesis was houses, always. Even when he was in the booth with a crate of records and a fresh mix, the houses were waiting for him at home. He had, in those years, a particular habit. He walked into rooms and looked at them, not in the way a normal person looks at a room, the wallpaper, the light, the people in it. He looked at rooms the way a man looks at a suit he is deciding whether to tailor. Where is the load? Where is the beam? What is the ceiling doing? Where is the natural light coming from? Who designed this, and what were they thinking? He had been doing this in rooms since he was small. He would do it for the rest of his life. He would do it, eventually, on national television, with a wife whose radio voice had warmed up 6 cities before he ever laid a hand on her, a clipboard on one side and a coffee on the other, and he would make a lot of young contractors nervous. But on the night in question, the Powerhouse concert night, he was not looking at the room. He was looking at a woman, and he was not seeing her exactly the way men look and see. He was feeling her. That is the distinction he will make later when asked. He did not see the beauty of her face at first. He did not clock her outfit. He was across the VIP section with another young lady, a date, a blind thing his boy had set up, and he was doing the polite thing you do on a blind date. And then something happened that he could not explain for the rest of his life. A feeling crossed the room. That's my wife. The sentence showed up in the center of his head, fully formed, as if someone had handed it to him. He did not say it to the young lady he was with. He did not know who he would have said it to. He just understood, the way you understand that a fire alarm is a fire alarm and not a test, that the sentence was real, and that if he did not move toward it, this second, he was going to lose it forever. So he did something a grown man should never do, and that he would apologize for 20 years later on a podcast. He turned to the young lady next to him. He said, "I will be right back. I need to go to the bathroom." He set down his drink. He walked out of the VIP section. He found a security guard at the velvet rope and produced, from somewhere inside his jacket, whatever credentials he had that could get him past the rope. You have to picture it. The slight, sheepish dig through the wallet, the flash of something laminated, the bro, "Come on, help me out eyebrow," and the security guard, God bless him, let him through. And Mike, the man with no blueprint, with a divorce still damp behind his ears, with a DJ career on one shoulder and a construction empire hiding in his other pocket, walked into a backstage area in search of a woman whose name he did not yet know. Somewhere across town, the young lady on the blind date is presumably still waiting. She waits a long time. He never comes back. 20 years later, on the podcast, Egypt says out loud to the camera, "I am so sorry to that lady. Whoever you are, wherever you are, he did not come back. I am sorry." And then, because Egypt is Egypt, she laughs. He was cheating on his wife, is how Mike tells it. He says it grinning. "I was cheating on my wife with another woman. I am not proud of it, except I am, because I was on my way to my wife." Chapter 3, Egypt, Powerhouse, 2004. He caught her at the tip of the stairs. She had crested the last step. The stairs are narrow in that particular backstage area, narrow enough that you can feel a man's breath if he is on them behind you. And Egypt had been trained by 7 years in radio not to turn around in backstage areas unless she absolutely had to, because backstage areas are, as a rule, full of men who want something. The music, on the other side of the velvet barrier, had gone muffled the way music goes muffled once you are off a stage and into a tunnel. She could hear the crowd as a suggestion rather than a roar. She could feel her own heartbeat again. She had just emceed in front of 20,000 people. Her skin was still warm with it. "Excuse me." It was a voice she had not heard before, and she had heard a lot of voices. Radio teaches you voices. You learn the ones that are trying to sell you something, and the ones that are trying to take something from you, and the ones that, for whatever reason, just want to be in the air near you. This voice was the third kind, and for a second she could not tell what that meant, because nobody had used that voice with her in 2 years. It had been all business at the radio station, and business at home, and business at the gym, and business at the ocean at 7 in the morning. She turned. She saw him. He was, and she has admitted this on every podcast she has ever done since, and you can quote her on it, a cutie pie. She said so to herself. She said so to her girlfriend later. He was brown-skinned, sharply angled, not very tall, but he walked tall, and he was dressed in the kind of clean, deliberate way that tells a woman a man picked out his outfit for a reason and is expecting you to notice the reason. He was looking at her the way he would look at her on that Atlas Mountain hillside 15 years later. She did not know that yet. She only knew, in the tunnel, with the crowd muffled behind her and her heartbeat loud in her own ears, that the man in front of her had arranged his day around getting to her somehow, and she was going to have to decide whether or not to help him. "Can I talk to you for a second?" "You can talk to me, sir." She said it the way Philly girls say things. There was a comma in it. There was a warning in it. It was not an invitation. It was a permit. What followed, she would retell on podcasts, on morning shows, on the couch in her own living room to a friend, for the rest of her life, and the story never quite got better for Mike no matter how many times it got retold. He reached into his bag. He pulled out a CD, a compact disc, a plastic thing with his music on it. He pressed it into her hand and said something charming about her voice, and something charming about the way she had moved on stage, and something charming about her name, and Egypt, whose entire job at the radio station, beyond being on air, was to go through CDs from producers and DJs and decide whose music got played, looked down at the CD, looked up at Mike, and understood exactly what was happening. She thought, "Oh, I see you. You think I was born yesterday." She thought, "This is not a man coming on to me. This is a man hustling for airplay." The music director in her shut the gate. The woman in her, who had just caught his eye and felt something neutral and warm pass across her ribs, had to take the L, because she knew in her bones that men who hand women CDs in VIP sections are not men you marry. She took the disc. She said politely, "Thank you. I appreciate it." She did not give him her number. She let him write his on the CD. She thinks about this later, years later, and shakes her head, because what he was actually doing was slipping her his number disguised as a promo. And she kept walking, and when she got to a trash can, she threw the CD away without playing it. She would never, in her life, know what song was on that disc. Mike will not tell her. Mike will tease her about it for the rest of their marriage. "That was my hit, baby. That was the hook. You threw away the hook. That was going to be Song of the Summer. And Egypt will laugh and say, 'Sir, if it was a hit, I would have heard it on my station.' And Mike will say, 'Your station is the reason I wrote it, and on it will go forever.'" At the time, the night of the concert, the back of the cab on the way home, lying in her bed that night with the streetlights making patterns on the ceiling, she thought she would never see him again. She assumed he was one more hustler, one more CD, one more man she was not going to let into her house. She rolled over and went to sleep, and woke up the next morning and went to the ocean and did not think about him, consciously, for 5 months. Something she could not quite dismiss, though, had gone into her, and it stayed. She would admit this later. She would say, "There was something very familiar, almost as if our souls had met in lives before, from the very conversation, from the time he opened his voice. It was a voice I had heard before. When I looked in his eyes, it was just familiar. It felt like home. And I was like, I don't know who he is, but I love him." Which is a beautiful thing for a woman to say about a man whose music she has never once played on the radio. Chapter 4. Mike, the CD with the number on it. She never played it. He watched the Billboard report. He watched the spin charts. He had a friend at the station. He had friends at every station. That is what DJs do. They have friends at every station. And he asked casually, the way a man asks who is hoping not to look like he is asking, whether the new joint had gotten any love. His friend said no. His friend said, "Nah, bro, she didn't touch it." Mike laughed. He understood immediately what had happened. He had fumbled it. He had walked into the moment of his life with the world's worst opening line. He had handed the woman who was going to be the mother of his children a promotional CD. He had made her feel like a radio station instead of a woman. He had, in the first 3 minutes of knowing her, confirmed every single rule she had made about men in the music industry, and she had thrown his heart into a Manhattan trash can, along with it. He did not beat himself up. He is not a man who beats himself up. He is a man who, when he makes a mistake, sketches out a new floor plan. The old plan had said, hand her the CD and charm her. The new plan said, find her again, in a context that has nothing to do with music, and let her see the rest of me. He did not have her number. She had, very politely, not given it to him. All he knew was that her station was based in Philadelphia, and her voice was on the air there, and her name was Egypt, and her face he could recognize from across a room now for the rest of his life. It was going to be, he understood, a matter of geography and patience. He waited. He worked. He kept DJing. He kept flipping houses on the side, a duplex in the Bronx, a walk-up in Bushwick, before Bushwick was Bushwick, a small thing in Jersey he bought with a cousin. He was always, in those years, building something. He was building himself mostly. 6 months after the Powerhouse, in June, the Puerto Rican Day Parade came down Fifth Avenue. If you have never been to the Puerto Rican Day Parade in New York City, you should understand that it is not strictly a parade. It is a citywide prayer. It is a block party that has gotten into a costume. The floats go on for miles, pumping bachata and reggaeton and hip-hop out of speaker stacks the size of refrigerators. The streets go on for miles. The humidity that day was in the high 80s. Mike was booked to DJ a float, a fat open-backed float trimmed with flags and banners, and because it was 90 degrees and he is a certain kind of man, he had taken his shirt off. He had baby oiled his chest. He was, as Egypt tells it later with one eyebrow up, a piece of hot, spicy, fried chicken. The Lord, she says, is a kind God. He gave that man a chest. Egypt was working the parade because her station was working the parade. She was on her own float at one point, emceeing. Then she came down off her float, because a parade float will eventually make a woman crave something fried, and she went walking down the avenue with her girlfriend in search of McDonald's. She will still, to this day, eat McDonald's. Do not let the clipboard fool you. She walked past his float, not because she recognized him, because she did not recognize him. Her girlfriend nudged her. "Girl," her girlfriend said, "that DJ is fine." Egypt looked up. She saw a shirtless, baby-oiled, 90-degree day piece of hot, spicy fried chicken on a float, and she thought, my, my, my. She did not recognize the face. She recognized the chest. She did the thing women do when they are shy, which is to say she did not stop. She walked past slower than she had to, so that her skirt would make the particular small sound skirts make when they hit a knee at a certain angle. She glanced. She did not stop. She circled the block. She came back. She did it again. She did it 5 times. He did not clock her. He was on the 1s and 2s. He was in the music. He was, technically, on the clock. Her girlfriend, finally, at the 5th pass, said flatly, "Girl, he is not paying attention to you. Let us go get the fries. Forget him." And Egypt, embarrassed, agreed, and they started to head off, at which point he looked up and saw her, and called her name. She froze. She looked at her girlfriend. "He called my name?" Her girlfriend, to her credit, did not mess with her. "He called your name. Girl, go." Egypt turned around on the pavement, walked back to the float, looked up at him with her hand shading her eyes against the late afternoon sun, and said, in a voice she had to recruit out of somewhere polite and not flustered, "Well, hello, sir." He said, "You don't remember me." She said, and you have to understand she still had not really registered the face because she was looking at the rest of him. "Sorry, I don't." He leaned down over the side of the float so that her eyes finally climbed to his and said, "From Powerhouse. You gave me the L at Powerhouse." And Egypt's whole face opened. "Oh my God," she said. "You are the guy from the club." He said, "I am the guy from the club." She said, "I threw your CD away." He said, "I know you did, which is why this time I am just going to ask you to dinner." And right there, on 5th Avenue, 90 degrees, with a float pumping out a reggaeton beat behind him and her girlfriend pretending not to watch, and 1,000 other people flowing around them like water around a stone, Egypt Sherrod finally gave Michael Jackson, not the singer, the contractor, the DJ, the builder, the man who would one day be her husband, her phone number. She would not, for another year, understand that he was certain. She only knew, walking back to her float with her friend, already laughing, already a little lightheaded, that the rule she had written on the inside of her head all those years before, "I do not date men in the industry," had just developed a little hairline crack in it. Part 2. Theater 5. Egypt, the second date. Second date. Madison Square Garden. Clear day. He remembers it clear. She remembers it overcast. They will argue the weather of that day for the rest of their lives, the way married people argue weather. Whatever it was outside, the two of them were inside a parked car, windows up, engine off, probably on 33rd Street, and they had just come from something, a screening, an event, some errand of his that she had tagged along to because she was already, by the second date, finding herself in his vicinity on a regular basis, without quite being able to account for how she had gotten there. They had known each other at that point for about a month and a week, maybe. The first date, if you could call it that, had been that reintroduction on Fifth Avenue. And then there had been a dinner, and now there was this thing outside Madison Square Garden. Egypt will, in every future telling, insist he proposed on the second date. Mike will, in every future telling, insist it was not a proposal, and she is dramatizing. This is what he actually said. He turned in the driver's seat, put one hand on the back of her headrest, and said, "I want to ask you something." "Okay." "When I ask you to marry me," he said, "not now, not next week, not next month, but when the time comes, will you say yes?" And Egypt, who had 2 years of silence behind her, 2 years of self-work, 2 years of not giving herself to men, who had sworn on her own life that she would not move fast, who had not given this man a key or a toothbrush, or even a second phone call in a week, looked at him and said, out loud, in the car, in the garage in Manhattan, "Yes." That is the whole story. He did not give her a ring. He was not on his knee. There was no candlelight. There was a parked car and a question and a short Philadelphia yes, which, if you know Philadelphia women, is not a short word. A short Philly yes is a long sentence with the middle removed, because the middle is understood. The middle is, "I have thought about this. I have thought about you. I have looked at you out of the corner of my eye for a month. I have turned the possibility of us over in my hands. I have asked my grandmother, in my head, whether you were the one, and she said yes, and I did not even need to ask her. I could feel her saying it from the other side. I have prayed about you. I am not a woman who hands her yes out lightly, and the very fact that I am giving it to you this soon is the ceremony. Take it." Yes, she said it. She heard herself say it. She was 27 years old, and she had just promised a man she had known for a month that when he eventually asked her to marry him, he had not yet even asked, she would say yes. A part of her, the Philly girl reasonable part of her, started immediately trying to take it back. The reasonable part of her will keep trying to take it back for the next 6 years. The reasonable part of her was going to tell him for years that she was seeing other people, when in fact she was home renting blockbuster movies by herself. The reasonable part of her was going to pretend she was not in love with him. The reasonable part of her was going to make him fight for her, over and over, the way some women have to make men fight, because once you have been hurt a certain way, you can only accept love if somebody has proven they are willing to chase you a while first. You have to understand what was going on inside her, because the inside of her is where the war was. She had said yes to him at Madison Square Garden, and she had meant it, and then she had gotten home and unlocked her apartment and dropped her keys on the counter and thought, "Girl, what did you just do?" It was a thought she would have in some form every 48 hours for the next year. She would stand in her kitchen at 2 a.m. with a glass of water in her hand, staring at the streetlights, and she would list, out loud, to nobody, the reasons she should not be with Michael Jackson. He was in the industry. She did not date men in the industry. He had been married before. He had a tattoo of her name on his back after 4 dates, which could be read either as devotion or as a flag she should not ignore. He wanted to be around her every night, which could be read either as intoxication or as an absence of other interior life. He lived in a way she did not yet understand. He had not earned her heart yet, not the way her ex had supposedly earned and then misspent it. And here she was handing it over anyway, because a sentence had shown up in the middle of his head at a concert, and because a sentence had shown up in the middle of her head on a hillside that was not even a hillside yet. She would call her girlfriend, the one who had been with her at the Puerto Rican Day parade, the one who had nudged her when the float went past, and she would try, on the phone, to build a case. "Girl," she would say, pacing the apartment, "I'm going to tell him I need space." And the girlfriend, who had known her since college, would say nothing for a full 3 seconds, in the way only old girlfriends know how to say nothing. And then she would say, "Okay, tell him that." And Egypt would say, "I'm going to." And the girlfriend would say, And Egypt would say, "I mean it." And the girlfriend would say, And then, eventually, Egypt would say, quieter, "Why are you not saying anything?" And the girlfriend would say, "Because you're not going to tell him that. Because I saw him at the parade. Because I have watched you for 2 years not light up for anybody. And you are lit up. You can lie to yourself about it all you want. You cannot lie to me about it. That man is your husband. Stop trying to find a way out of what God just walked into your life." Egypt would hang up the phone. She would sit on her kitchen floor with her back against the cabinet. She would put her head on her knees. She would say, out loud, to the empty apartment, "Lord, I hear you. Please do not let me mess this up." And she would hear her grandmother, without her grandmother being in the room, answer her the way her grandmother always answered. "Baby, you don't fall out of love. You stop doing the things that kept you in it. You already in it. Start doing the things." So she would, slowly, over months, over years. She would do the things. She would answer the phone when he called. She would meet him at the diner when he asked. She would let him cook her spaghetti in his kitchen the way he cooked spaghetti, which was with too much garlic, and she would eat it anyway. She would stop listing the reasons. She would surrender the list, piece by piece, to the part of her that had already decided. The reasonable part of her never entirely gave up, even at the altar, even walking down the aisle to him. The reasonable part of her was whispering, "Egypt, you sure about this?" And Egypt, who had learned at her grandmother's stove that the sentence had already been said, and what was left was the doing, kept walking. But the yes had been spoken, and the yes had been heard, and Mike, on his side of the car, filed it away. He did not make a thing of it. He did not take out a camera. He did not call his boys. He said, "Okay, cool," and he turned the key in the ignition, and the car pulled away from Madison Square Garden and into the rest of their lives. What followed, those years between the yes and the wedding, was the part of the story nobody's grandmother really teaches them about. You imagine when you are a girl that the engagement happens, and then the wedding happens, and the years in between are a blur of cake tastings and arguments about flowers. What nobody tells you is that there is a long stretch of time in most real love stories between the deciding and the doing, and that the deciding and doing stretch is where the marriage is actually being built. They moved in together eventually. They lived for a stretch in an extended stay hotel in Atlanta while their first house was being built. Because by then they were flipping houses in Georgia on purpose, and he wanted to watch the foundation go in with his own eyes. The extended stay hotel is not a romantic story. An extended stay hotel is a mini fridge and a microwave and a queen bed that somebody else has slept in, and a coffee machine that only makes one cup and a shower stall that leaks. They stayed there for months. They ate the continental breakfast together. They watched their house being framed from the parking lot of a hotel every morning. Coffee and styrofoam, her leaning into his shoulder. This is how we live now. This is how we live now. All right. She was, in those months, beginning to understand him. Mike was a man who could be patient about the right things. He could be patient about a foundation. He could be patient about a career. He could be patient about a marriage. What he was not patient about was her. What he was not patient about was the fact that he wanted her in his orbit every night, every day, all the time, and she kept trying to slip away, to go home to her own apartment, to do her own laundry, to recenter. "I need my space," she would say. "I do not need my space," he would say. Mike. Egypt. "Baby, we are moving too fast. Baby, we got the rest of our lives to slow it down. Come here." And because he is Mike, and because there is a certain kind of Mike pull to a woman's elbow when he puts his hand on it, she would come. Chapter 6. Mike, One-Man Woman. He did not know for a long time that she was lying to him. You have to understand the specific lie before you can understand the specific love. The lie was small. The lie was tender. The lie was, "I'm seeing other people." She was not. She had not been with anyone since the 2-year stretch of self-love, and she had not been with anyone since the Powerhouse. And she had not been with anyone during the month between the Powerhouse rematch and the Madison Square Garden, yes. And she was certainly not seeing anyone during the relationship she was now halfway into with Mike. She was home. She was blockbuster and chill home. She was ordering takeout home. She was on the couch in pajamas with a bowl of cereal home. And when he would call her on a Thursday night and say, "Baby, let's go to dinner," she would say, very coolly, very casually, "I can't. I'm going on a date." And then she would hang up the phone, and she would put on sweatpants, and she would rent When Harry Met Sally from the Blockbuster on the corner, and she would eat popcorn in bed, and she would fall asleep with the TV on. She did this for months. She did this partly because she was scared of how fast she was falling. She did this partly because her Philly grandmother had taught her a man will not take seriously a woman. he does not have to work for, and she did this partly because she was testing him. She wanted to know if he would leave. She wanted to see if he would pivot. She wanted to see if she was imagined to be spreading herself out a little bit, whether he would go spread himself out too. He did not. This is, in retrospect, the thing she should have understood earlier, that he had no intention of moving. He had been from the powerhouse forward locked in. When she said, "I am seeing other people," Mike heard the words. He did not believe them exactly, but he also did not care if they were true. He had already decided. He was already painting the house. One day, and this scene will make every married woman reading it close her eyes and say, "Yes, Lord, Egypt was on the air in Philadelphia. Live. Commercial break in 10. He walked into the studio. He sat down on the little stool behind the host's chair, the one interns and interns' boyfriends sometimes sit on. She saw him in the glass, saw him behind her in her own reflection, saw him waiting. She did her segment. She was poised. She was Egypt on the air, which is a very different woman from Egypt in bed with cereal. And she gave the city its weather, and its traffic, and its artist interview. And she tossed it to commercial. The on-air light clicked off. She took off her headphones. She turned around on her chair. She looked at him. He said, "Just let me love you." She opened her mouth. She closed her mouth. He said, "I see what you are doing. All this pretending. I see it. I know. Stop. Just let me love you." The engineer in the control booth had the presence of mind to keep his eyes on his board. The producer in her ear, if she was in her ear at all, said nothing. Egypt looked at Mike, and Mike looked at Egypt, and for a full 3 or 4 seconds there was no sound in the studio except the hum of equipment. "Mike, I'm not asking you to tell me yes right now. I'm asking you to stop lying to me. You've been a player long enough. Drop it. Baby, you should let me love you." She let him love her. Not that night, not at the station, not on a microphone, but in her heart, in the back seat of her own head, in the part of her that had been building wall after wall after wall since she was 25. The rebar came down. She heard him. She heard what he was saying. She heard the unkillable confidence of a man who has seen his wife and is telling his wife to stop playing. She exhaled. For the first time in about 6 years, she exhaled. 4 dates in, or 3 dates in, they still dispute the math. He came home to the extended stay with his shirt off and turned around. Across the width of his shoulder blades, from blade to blade, tattooed in serious, permanent, no-joke ink, was a single word. Egypt. Her name, all caps, across his back. She stared at it. He turned around, grinning. "What do you think?" She said, and this is the Philly in her, the music director in her, the woman who had been handed the CD and the VIP a lifetime ago. "I think that is a control strategy." "What?" "Mike, look. The letter E can easily be changed to a G. The letter T can easily be changed to an L. If we break up, I'm going to have to make sure you only date Angelus after me." He laughed so hard he had to sit down on the hotel bed. "Baby," he said, "I got your name on my back because your name is the name. I ain't ever had this for anybody. I do not care what you say. I do not care what you do. I do not care if you walk out that door tonight. That is not coming off. That is there." She looked at the back. She looked at him. She shook her head. She laughed. In the dark of her own chest, she said to herself, "All right, fine." And the last little piece of the wall went down quietly, in a hotel room in Atlanta, with the sound of traffic on I-285 going by outside, and she never put it back up again. Chapter 7. Egypt, the canceled wedding. They canceled the first wedding. Nobody outside the family really knew. Nobody outside the family really needs to know the reasons. There were several, as there always are, and the one they will talk about in public is that the swine flu had just hit that year, and people were scared to travel, and 3 of the great-grandmothers were alive, and none of them were getting on a plane. That is the public answer. The private answer, underneath the public answer, is that they were not quite ready yet. God, as Mike will say later through a play, God, as Egypt will say later, had something to say about the timing. So they canceled the first one. Do not underestimate how much that costs. Canceling a wedding, even for a good reason, is a small public humiliation for the couple doing the canceling. There are relatives you have to call. There are gifts you have to return. There are invitations you have to retract. There is a vendor. There is always a vendor who will not give your deposit back. You feel for a few weeks like a woman who agreed to jump out of a plane and then did not jump. You feel the eyes. Egypt felt the eyes. She is not ashamed of having felt them. She will say, if you get her going, that the cancellation was the hardest part of the entire engagement, because it was the one time in their relationship when the outside world got to watch them stumble, and she could not control the narrative. She hates not being able to control the narrative. She is a radio personality. She has been controlling narratives since she was 19. What she did, what they did, was go to therapy. That, Mike will say on a podcast later, is where people hear therapy and they think, oh, something's wrong. No, something's right. We are packing some more stuff in our tool bag. They packed. They unpacked. They sat in a room with a stranger and they said out loud to the stranger the things they had not yet said out loud to each other. Mike had never had a male role model. Mike had never seen a man be a husband. Mike had to learn out loud, in a room, at 29, what most men are supposed to learn by osmosis at 11. Egypt had seen marriages, good ones, in her family, but she had also seen a previous relationship of her own collapse, and she had carried the collapse into the new relationship like a small stone in her pocket. She took the stone out on the therapist's couch. She looked at it. She decided whether she needed to keep carrying it. She put it down. They learned in therapy the phrase that became the spine of their marriage. It did not come from the therapist. It came from Mike, though the therapist is the one who created the room for him to say it. Your significant other, he said one afternoon, is not your competition. He said it about work. He said it about money. He said it about shine. He said it about the fact that Egypt was, by then, clearly the one with the shinier career. Radio personality, soon-to-be television host, about to be handed the keys to a little show on a cable network nobody thought would be a big deal. And he, Mike, was the one picking up the slack at home, on the job sites, in the background. He said it to himself as much as he said it to her. Your significant other is not your competition. If we are winning, we are winning. He will say it in different words for the next 15 years. He will say it to other men. He will say it in interviews. He will say it from the pulpit of his own living room to their daughters, once the daughters arrive. He will say it at weddings. It will become a Mikeism. Your significant other is not your competition. The second wedding, the one that actually happened, happened a year later. The great-grandmothers were still alive. 2 of them, 102 and 105. They came, 5 generations of women, standing together, watching Egypt walk down the aisle in her mother's arm. 5 generations of Black women who had built marriages out of what life had handed them, standing in one room, watching the youngest of their bloodline promise herself forever. The oldest of them, who had married her husband when Jim Crow was still running the South, was holding onto a cousin's elbow and had her eyes closed. She was praying. That was what she did at weddings. She prayed with her eyes closed and her head tilted the way women tilt their heads when they are talking to God about somebody who used to be a baby in their arms. Before Egypt started walking, she turned to Mike and said, at the top of the aisle, so only he could hear, and with the kind of face Philly women make when they mean every single word, "You realize this is for life. Are you sure you want to marry me? I did not wait this long to get divorced." He grinned. He said, "I didn't wait this long either." They walked. The pastor said the words, the old-school Black church words, the kind of words that made the church mothers in the 3rd row nod in agreement with their lace hats, because these were words that had married grandmothers before them and would marry granddaughters after. The 2 of them said, "I do." And the 5 generations in the pews cried in one long wave that went from the back row to the front, the way Black families cry at weddings, the way love moves through a room when it has been waited for. Chapter 8. Mike, the kitchen floor. Their wedding night was not, in the conventional sense, spicy. He wants that to be clear. He will laugh, looking back at it, because they are a couple for whom the wedding night did not have to be the event. They had lived together. They had been a family already for years. What the wedding night was, instead of a first, was a resetting. It was a reconfirmation. It was the 2 of them, in the suite, looking at each other in the mirror for a long minute without saying anything, understanding that the paperwork had just changed something about the air they were breathing. He turned on the Bluetooth. She had her shoes off. The suite had that gold carpet, gilt mirror, hotel ballroom look. He queued up a song he had DJ'd 100 times in 100 clubs for 100,000 strangers, and he held his hand out. "Come here." "Mike, we've been dancing all night. Come here." He pulled her in. He had her left hand in his right hand. In the formal way he had learned from men who had taught him on wedding floors, he had DJ'd over the years, and his left hand was in the small of her back. They swayed. He put his forehead on her forehead. He breathed out slow. She breathed out slow. "We made it," she said. "We made it." "I was nervous," she said. "I was nervous." "Were you really?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because I wanted to do it right." She closed her eyes. They stayed like that for the length of the song. Then he kissed her, in the slow way he kisses her, the way that is not a performance, the way that is a hello. And the dance ended, and the rest of the night was their own. And the first morning of their marriage began, and the rest of their lives began with it. A quick thing about the dance, because it is coming back. Dancing is going to come back in this book many times. Dancing is how Mike tells Egypt he loves her without having to say it in words. He will dance with her in their kitchen during the pandemic, at 2 a.m, in socks, with no music on, just humming. He will dance with her at their clients' closing days. On the shows they will go on to make together, when a deal has just come in, and he is so happy he cannot sit down. He will pull her into a kitchen on camera and spin her, and Egypt will laugh and call him a fool, and America will watch it and say, "That is what I want." Mike dances when his heart is full. Egypt, who pretends not to dance, dances with him every time. Remember the dancing. It is going to show up again. The first house they bought together as a married couple was in Atlanta, on a street that neither of them would live on today, in a neighborhood that neither of them, if they are being honest, particularly wanted to be in at the time. It was a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,400 square foot cottage with a tilted porch and a kitchen from the late 80s, and they paid less for it than most people pay for a used car, and they moved in with a mattress on the floor, and a coffee pot, and 2 plastic bins of clothes. It was not a honeymoon cottage. It was a starter flip. It was the first rung of the ladder they were going to climb together. She cried the night they closed, not from joy, from a low private exhaustion, the kind of exhaustion that arrives in the middle of a long project and wants to know if you are ever going to get to sit down. Mike found her on the front step. She had her face in her hands. He sat down next to her without touching her, because he had learned by then that Egypt, when she is crying, does not always want to be touched in the first 30 seconds. He waited. He let her breathe. "I am tired, Mike." "I know. I thought we were going to be rich by now." He laughed. He could not help it. She, through the tears, laughed at herself laughing. It is one of her favorite things about him, that he will laugh at her in a way her girlfriends are afraid to. "Baby, we are going to be rich. Not yet. Tonight we are going to be on a mattress on the floor. Tomorrow we are going to be tiling a bathroom. 6 months from now we are going to sell this house for a profit. And the next house is going to be a little nicer. And the next one. And then 1 year the kids are going to be running around on carpet we actually paid for. And then 1 year we are going to be on television. Trust me." "You do not know that." "I know it." "How?" "Because I am Mike," he said. And he was not joking exactly. That was the answer. He knew what he was going to build because he was the one who was going to build it. She leaned her head on his shoulder. They watched a street light come on across the road. Somebody's cat crossed the yard. The house, behind them, with its stained carpet and its sagging ceiling fan, was theirs. Every bad decision in it belonged to the previous owner. Every good decision from this day forward was going to belong to them. She was, very quietly, beginning to understand what a marriage actually was. It is not the wedding. It is not the dance. It is the two of you, on a porch, on a street you would not have chosen, agreeing out loud that the next 6 months are going to be hard, and agreeing to do them anyway, together, with a mattress on the floor. They flipped that house. They flipped the next one. They flipped the one after that. By the time Kendall came along, they had a pattern. Buy the house, live in the house, renovate the house around themselves, sell the house, move to the next one. They would raise a small child through the sound of hammers. They would put her crib in a room with no drywall. They would install countertops at 11 at night, after she had fallen asleep, Egypt holding the trim while Mike screwed it down, both of them whispering so they would not wake the baby. They would become, house by house, the people HGTV would eventually come looking for, though neither of them knew that yet. The night the first flip sold, the tilted porch house, they went to a chain restaurant that was not fancy. They split a plate of wings and a plate of pasta. He had a beer, she had a glass of red wine. They sat across a vinyl booth from each other with their wedding rings glinting under bad fluorescent light, and they toasted. "To the next one," he said. "To the next one," she said. That is what you toast to in a real marriage, not the one you just finished. The next one. There is always a next one. A next house, a next baby, a next show, a next season, a next grief, a next hill in a country you have never been to. You toast to it before you have seen it, because the only way to keep a marriage alive is to keep agreeing out loud every few months that you are going to do the next thing together. She drank. He drank. They went home to the second house, which they had just closed on, which also had a tilted porch, and they lay down on another mattress on another floor, and they fell asleep, holding hands, because the radiator was broken, and the mattress was cold, and somebody had to keep somebody warm. Part 3. Chapter 9. Egypt. His turn, her turn. Here is the part of the story where it almost broke them. You should know in advance that it did not. You should know that this book does not have a divorce in it, and you can stop holding your breath. But the thing that nearly got them, the thing that, statistically, gets most couples, came for them about 6 or 7 years into the marriage, and it came for them in a way that, from the outside, looked like a good problem. HGTV called. The network had been paying attention to Egypt for a while. She had hosted Property Virgins, the original one, the one that ran for many seasons before she took it over, and then Flipping Virgins, which was a spin-off, and which Egypt, to this day, calls the worst name for a TV show anyone has ever come up with. Flipping Virgins. I used to pause before I said it. Like, what are we doing here? She had been for years the face of a small empire of real estate programming. But here is the thing. Mike was not on any of it. Mike was the contractor. Mike was the one on the job site. Mike was the one, in fact, flipping the houses. Mike and Egypt together had built a whole real estate and construction business in Atlanta, side by side, and they had pitched a show to the network early on that was supposed to be the two of them together. The network, at the time, had said no. The network, at the time, had said, Egypt is the host. Egypt is the talent. The other guy is just a contractor. We don't have a slot for two of you. Egypt did the shows anyway, because a woman does not walk away from her career because a network is too blind to see her husband. She did the shows, and she came home, and she told Mike, over and over, "Baby, this is supposed to be us. I hate that it is not us. One day it is going to be us. Hold on." And Mike, who does not have a jealous bone in his body, who does not have one single jealous bone, go ahead and check, said, "Baby, go. If they see you doing it, if they believe in you, they will see me eventually. I will be right here in the background. Keep building." Here is what that meant in practice. It meant that Egypt spent weeks on the road while Harper was a baby. It meant that Egypt had to bring Harper with her in a sling to film on location because Harper was still nursing. It meant that Mike was home with the older kids, cooking dinner, doing homework, holding it down, while Egypt was on a red-eye to a house in Texas that he had helped her research but would never see in person. It meant that, from the outside, to strangers who did not know them, to comment sections on Instagram, to aunts at the family reunion, to well-meaning friends who had never actually sat in their house. It looked like he was taking an L. He ain't got no money. She doing everything. He home with the kids while she out hosting. Mike, on Egypt's behalf, became the internet's favorite case study. Comment sections are cruel to a man who is doing the right thing quietly, because the right thing quietly does not look, from 1,000 feet, very different from failure. Men are supposed to be loud about their success, the internet said. Men are supposed to be the star. If your wife is bigger than you, something is wrong. He did not care. He really did not. He will tell you on a podcast, sitting right next to her, that he understood the entire time what he was doing. He had eaten humble pie for his wife to shine, and he had done it on purpose, and he was not going to now pretend, for the sake of some stranger's opinion, that it had been an L. We a team, he would say. If she eating, I'm eating. Chill out. Egypt cared, though. Egypt, who cares about her husband's dignity more than she cares about her own, saw the comments, saw the way people looked at him at the grocery store, saw, on one particular evening, this would be their almost broke-us night, the one she will not forget, Mike come in from a job and set his bag down in the mudroom and just stop, not sit, not speak, stop. A statue of himself, sawdust in his hair. Mike, I'm good, baby. You're not good. What? He shook his head. He did not want to talk about it. She went to him. She slid her arms under his arms. She put her ear on his chest. Later, she will tell friends she could hear his heart going faster than it should have been going. She stood there for a long minute, and she did not say anything, because she knew, the way wives know, that he was going to eventually talk, and she wanted to be there when he did. It's hard, he said finally. His voice was not a voice she had heard before. It is hard sometimes. What's hard, baby? Watching you. She waited. Watching you shine and not being next to you, watching them love you and not see me, watching them tell our story and leave me out of it. I can eat it. But sometimes it gets heavy and I just sit with it. She lifted her head off his chest. She put her hands on the sides of his face. She made him look at her. Mike, listen to me. I hear you. We are not doing this. Baby. No, listen. We are not doing this. You are not going to sit in the mudroom of our house and feel small about a decision you told me to make. Not in this house. He smiled. Small smile. He knew what was coming. You told me to go. You told me, babe. If they see you doing it, they will see me. Just go. I went because you told me to go. If you want me to come home, I will come home. If you want me to cancel the next show, I will cancel it. We will be broke together, and you will be the star of our living room. Whatever you want. But do not ever, ever sit in this house and wonder if you are the reason the sun is up. You are the reason. It is your turn next, I promise you. And then she kissed him. Not a sexy kiss, a Philly kiss. The kiss you get when a Philly woman has decided for you that a day is not going to go the way your insecurity wanted it to. She kissed him the way a mother kisses a son who has just lost a game. Mike. Egypt. Go get the kids. We are ordering pizza, and we are dancing in this kitchen tonight. They did. They ordered pizza. He put Chaka Khan on the Bluetooth. The children ate at the counter. Their oldest, pretending to be too cool, tried not to laugh at her parents. Kendall danced next to them, 10 years old, barefoot, her braids flying. Harper, still small, was on Mike's hip with one of her tiny hands in his big hand. They danced in the kitchen until the pizza got cold. Egypt, for a full song, put her head on Mike's shoulder and let him carry her. And in her head she prayed, "Lord, let his turn come. Please, let his turn come." His turn was already coming. It would arrive in a kitchen island. It would arrive on an iPhone. It would arrive as the world locked itself in its houses in March of 2020. And Mike Jackson, contractor, with an HGTV camera trained on him, would turn the lens around on the life they had been living all along. Chapter 10. Mike, the Kitchen Island. The pandemic did for Mike what years of pitching had not done. You need to understand it in your chest, that for more than a decade Mike had been telling production companies the same thing. The show is not Egypt with a tool bag. The show is us. The show is the real story. He had said it in meetings. He had said it into headsets between takes. He had said it to network executives in Los Angeles over lunch, at 5-star restaurants, men across a white tablecloth saying, "Turn the camera around." Nobody had listened. Then the world shut down. March of 2020 is a fuzzy month in everybody's memory. What Mike remembers is the house, their house in Atlanta, all of them in it. The business still technically running out of the kitchen island. Egypt on her laptop, doing calls with producers. Mike on his laptop doing calls with subcontractors. The older kids on school Zooms at the breakfast bar. Harper on the floor building a tower out of wooden blocks. 3 businesses running out of one kitchen island. A family running out of one kitchen island. He picked up his phone. He turned the camera on. He started filming. "Mike." "Just let me." Mike, put the phone down. "Just let me, baby." "I am in my pajamas." "You are beautiful. Keep talking to that producer." She rolled her eyes. She went back to the Zoom. He filmed her. He filmed the kids. He filmed the sawdust footprints that had made it in from the job site on his boots. He filmed her yelling at the kids not to yell. He filmed himself yelling at the kids not to yell. He filmed the counter. He filmed the dog. He filmed nothing, really, and everything. Whole days of it. He filmed Egypt making coffee. He filmed Egypt doing her hair in the kitchen mirror because the bathroom was being used by a child. He filmed Egypt crying for a minute one evening after a phone call about a family member and the virus, and he filmed himself going to her and pulling her into his chest, which was the kind of thing that no production company would ever have scripted, because no production company would have known to. After a while, he started cutting pieces of it together. He is a DJ. Cutting is his first language. He handed it to their management team. Their management team handed it up. It went to the network. And this time, the network said yes. More than yes. The network said, "Why have we not been doing this the entire time? Egypt has been on this network for a decade, and we have been ignoring half of the story." The network partnered them with a new production company, the company that had done the T.I. and Tiny show, 51 Minds, a company that, crucially, had never worked with HGTV before, which meant they did not carry the network's old assumptions about what a real estate show was supposed to look like. A company that, as Egypt says, got black people, could tell a black family story and tell it honestly. The company that had seen, in Mike's rough pandemic footage, a family on a kitchen island, and had understood what they were looking at. They made Married to Real Estate. It premiered in 2021. It has run 4 seasons. It is in 82 countries. Their faces are in gyms, in pediatricians' offices, in dentists' waiting rooms, on airplane monitors. Strangers run up to them on the street. Strangers run up to them at the grocery store, Costco, the carpool line at the school, Sunday service. Strangers know Kendall. Strangers know Harper. Strangers know the dog. The first time Mike saw himself on HGTV, in a promo, on his own television, in his own living room, the kids running around the rug, Egypt on the couch next to him with her feet in his lap. The first time his own face came on the screen, in the bumper before the episode. He did not say anything for a second. He just watched. Egypt was watching him watch. He felt her watching. He turned his head slow. Baby. Yes. Did you see me? I saw you. On the TV. On the TV. Nationally. Nationally, baby. He did not weep. He is not a weeper. He put his head back on the couch. He closed his eyes. He exhaled the way a man exhales when a thing he has been waiting 13 years for has finally walked into the room and sat down next to him and said, "Yes, I am real." "Your turn," Egypt whispered. "Our turn," he whispered back. There is an image that lives in the back of his head from that first year of the show season, and he has never told anyone about it directly, but it leaks through in interviews, the way a man's truest scenes always leak through eventually. The image is this. He is at a hardware store in suburban Atlanta, not a Home Depot, one of the smaller local joints, picking up a box of finishing nails for a trim job on a client's house. He is in his work clothes. He is sweaty. He is not looking for attention. He gets to the register. The cashier, a man around his own age, a black man with gray starting at his temples, looks up from the register at Mike's face, and his whole expression shifts. Not stardom, nothing that loud. It is something quieter, recognition, respect. "Brother," the cashier says, "I've been watching the show. You and your wife make us look good." Mike stands there with his box of nails. "Appreciate you, brother." "No, listen. You listen to me. I got 3 daughters. I got a wife. I've been married 12 years. I turn that show on with my wife on Sunday nights. I want you to know something." "Yeah?" "You and your wife. The way you look at her. The way you back her play. I am trying to be that for my wife. I just want you to know that." Mike, who does not cry, who has only cried once in this whole story, stood at the register of a hardware store in suburban Atlanta with a box of finishing nails, and had to turn his head and look out the front window for a second so that the cashier would not see his eyes do the thing his eyes did not normally do. He did not have a male role model. He had never seen a man be a husband. He had to learn out loud, at 29, on a therapist's couch, what most boys are supposed to learn by watching. And here, now, because he had kept showing up, because Egypt had kept teaching him, because a cable network had finally turned a camera on them, and a production company from outside the HGTV pipeline had finally known what to do with what they saw. Here, a stranger at a hardware store in the suburbs of a southern city was telling him he was the model now. Him. The man with no model had become one. He paid. He took his box of nails. He walked out to his truck. He sat in the driver's seat. He put both hands on the steering wheel and stared through the windshield at the parking lot for a full minute without moving. Then he called his wife. "Baby." "Yeah?" "Nothing. I love you. I just wanted to tell you I love you." "Mike, what happened?" "Nothing happened. I just love you. I will see you at the house." He hung up. He started the truck. He drove home. The man with no blueprint had, by showing up every day and paying attention, become the blueprint. That is how it works. That is how it has always worked. You do not find a model. You become one. And you do not become one on purpose. You become one by being patient for long enough with somebody you love in front of an audience you cannot see, who has been watching the whole time. Chapter 11. Egypt. What happens in this house? There is one rule in their marriage, one single, solid, not for negotiation rule, and it is the rule that has, more than any other rule, kept them alive. What happens in this marriage stays in this marriage. She says it like a Philly commandment. She says it as if somebody is going to come for her with a subpoena. And she means, specifically, no friends, no family, no comment section. No stranger in an Uber ever gets to hear from her mouth a complaint about her husband. Ever. She has run into women. She has known these women her whole life. She has them in her cell phone. They are good women. They are honorable women who will call her and ask her how Mike is, and what she has learned to do over the years is answer that question in one of three ways. He's good. We're good. We're in it. That is it. She does not unpack. She does not venting. She does not send the paragraph. She does not hop on the friend phone and run it down. If she has a gripe with Mike, Mike hears it first. Mike hears it, in fact, second. God hears it first, because she prays about it before she brings it to him. Because her grandmother taught her that a woman should never come to her man with an unprayed-over complaint. But after God, the next person who hears it is Mike. Not her cousin, not her sister, not her work friend. Mike. This is not, she will say, because she does not trust her friends. It is because she loves her friends, and she knows her friends love her. And she knows that the second you let a friend hold a grievance against your husband on your behalf, that friend is going to hold it forever, long after you have forgiven him. She has seen it. Everyone has seen it. A woman tells her best friend about the Tuesday night the husband came home late, and the best friend nods and says, girl. And by Saturday, the husband has done something sweet, and the wife has forgiven him completely, and is on his arm at brunch, and the best friend is still sitting there carrying that Tuesday. The best friend is mad at him. The wife is over it. Now the marriage has a third party in it, and the third party is mad, and eventually the third party is going to say something like, "Girl, why do you stay?" And the Tuesday is going to come back, and the marriage is going to leak. Egypt will not have it. She will not have a third party. She tells her girlfriends, if it is not us, it is God. It is a rule she learned the hard way. Years ago, early in the relationship, she had complained about Mike to somebody she loved. She will not name the person because it does not matter. And she had seen, in that person's face, a little flicker of satisfaction. A little, I knew he was trouble. A little, I told you. And Egypt had gone home that night and looked at herself in the mirror and realized she had just handed a small, unkind version of her husband to somebody she had no right to hand him to. She did not do it again. Ever. She asks Mike to do the same for her. She asks him not to go to his boys with her. And Mike, who has never been a man who complains about his wife to other men anyway, keeps his side of the bargain. If Mike has an issue with Egypt, he does not go tell the bar. He comes home. He sits at the kitchen island. He says, "Baby, I need to talk to you." And he talks to her. And she talks back. And they work through it. And the marriage, held inside the marriage, does not leak. "People want to know what the secret is," she will say on a podcast. "I will tell you the secret. The secret is we do not have an audience for our fights. Fights need an audience. Marriages die when they start performing for the audience. You take the audience away. Most fights run out of steam in about 15 minutes. Mike grins next to her, nods. "Your significant other," he says, "is not your competition." She rolls her eyes because he says that line every single time, and every single time it makes her roll her eyes, and every single time, in the car on the way home, she will hold his hand a little tighter because she knows the line is true. She knows it is why they have lasted. Chapter 12. Mike, Kendall at the door. There is a scene. Real. She has told it on 3 separate podcasts, and she tells it the same way every time, which is how you know it is the scene. Kendall is 5. Egypt and Mike have been trying for another baby for years. They have given up. Egypt, who had Kendall easily, who assumed Kendall was the first of many, who pictured 4, 5, a little stair-step of kids, has had to sit with the fact that Kendall might be it. Kendall might be the only baby. God apparently was done, and Egypt had to learn, the way women have to learn, to be okay with that. She was working on it. Some days she was more okay than others. One Wednesday, she goes to pick Kendall up from school. Normal day. Kendall comes out with her book bag. The teacher waves goodbye, and then, as Egypt turns to leave, the teacher calls after her. "Mrs. Jackson, hey, congratulations." Egypt stops. She turns. She looks at the teacher. On what? The teacher gets a small, confused look. "Kendall told the class you were having a baby. Is that... Did she misunderstand?" Egypt laughs. "Because what else do you do?" "Oh my goodness. Yes, she misunderstood. We are not. But thank you." The teacher, a polite woman, says, "Oh, of course, children say the most random things." And she smiles. And Egypt takes Kendall to the car, and she buckles Kendall in, and she drives home, and she tells Mike over dinner, and Mike laughs, and they shake their heads at the beautiful nonsense of 5-year-olds, and they eat, and they watch TV, and they go to bed. 2 months later, they are in Morocco, on the Atlas Mountains hike, and a doctor in Atlanta is about to find out, when they get home, that Egypt is 3.5 months pregnant. Count the months back. She was already pregnant when Kendall told the teacher. Kendall did not misunderstand. Kendall had known. That is the part Egypt cannot get over. She will never get over it. It is not. You have to be careful here. A mystical story, in the sense that Egypt is careful about being too woo-woo with her audience. But it is a testimony story, and she will say so plainly. Her 5-year-old daughter had walked into her preschool class and announced to her teacher that her mother was going to have a baby. And her 5-year-old daughter had been right, and Egypt had spent 2 months thinking her daughter had misunderstood, while Harper was already inside her body, quietly, waiting to be found. Doctor said no, Mike will say, on every podcast since, every time Egypt tells this story, God said yes. Exactly, Egypt will say. That is Harper's origin story. Kendall called her up from across a classroom in Atlanta. Harper came. They found out on a hillside in Morocco. She was born later that year, healthy, with her father's eyes and her mother's mouth, and Kendall, who was by then 6, held her for a full hour in the hospital and did not give her up to anybody. Kendall had known. Kendall had been telling them for 6 months. Kendall is now a young lady, and if you ever get a chance to ask her about her sister, she will tell you, with the patient air of an elder sibling, I told them. Nobody listened. I told them. Part 4, Chapter 13, Egypt, Atlas Mountains, Revisited, Back to the Hill. You remember the hill, the Atlas Mountains, 2019. Egypt 3.5 months pregnant with Harper and not knowing it yet. Mike 10 feet above her, black t-shirt, cargo pants, water bottle raised like a toast. The crack about Philly and Broad already out of her mouth. The hell yeah already out of his. Here is what you do not know yet about that hillside. They were not there by accident. Mike had booked the trip. Mike had booked the trip because he had been feeling for about a year a small, persistent whisper in his chest that they had been going too fast. Not their marriage, their life, the careers, the kids, the shows, the businesses. They had been moving, the way successful young couples move, and Mike had noticed, in the way men notice, that they had not looked at each other straight on in a while. They had been doing life together, but they had not been, in his specific, custom, Mike definition of the verb, marrying each other. That is his verb. He uses it as a verb. Are we marrying each other this week? Or are we just living next to each other? He had said to Egypt months earlier, let's go somewhere. Not with the kids, not with the parents, not with anybody. Us. Let's go somewhere hard. Let's go somewhere we have never been. He picked Morocco because he had never been. He picked the Atlas Mountains because a travel magazine had told him they were the kind of thing you saw once in your life. He picked the hike because he wanted to see his wife breathe hard. He's a simple man, in certain ways. He wanted to see his wife breathe hard in a landscape neither of them knew, because he wanted to see what she looked like outside of their normal. Their normal, that year, was a grind. The HGTV pitches were finally coming together. The pandemic was a year away, and nobody could see it. Egypt was flying more than he was. The comments were bad. The kitchen floor conversation, the pizza and Chaka Khan night had happened months before, and it had fixed the feeling for that night. But the feeling was a recurring feeling, and Mike wanted to take them off the grid for a minute, to see what was still there when you stripped the grid away. So they got to Morocco. They got to the hotel. They got up early. They got on the hillside. And what Egypt did not know, what she will admit only later to her audience, is that she had been waiting for this trip in her own way. She had been, in her head, rehearsing a question. She had been trying to figure out whether the question was a question she was allowed to ask a husband 14 years in. She asked it. If we were at the altar right now, would you say yes? It is the question every married woman eventually has to know the answer to, whether or not she ever has the nerve to ask it. It is the question that sits in the back of the throat on Tuesday nights. Would you do it again? Knowing what you know now? Knowing me? Would you still pick me? Most wives never ask. They're scared of the pause. A pause can destroy a marriage. pause in that moment is a whole book. Egypt is brave. She asked it. Mike did not pause. Hell yeah. And then, because he is Mike, because he never lets her drive the moment alone, because he had been waiting 14 years to turn the question around, what about me? She told him, I choose you all day, every day. They sat on a rock. They looked out over Morocco. They drank water. A third-party hiker went past them, nodded politely, in clothes that suggested he had done this hike many times. A bird did what birds do. The wind off the range was warm and carried something that smelled, Egypt will say later, like the way her grandmother's house smelled in the summer. She did not know yet that she was pregnant. He did not know yet that he was about to pick up an iPhone in March of 2020 and film a pandemic. Neither of them knew yet that Harper was going to be born at the end of that year, or that the network was finally about to say yes, or that a production company in Los Angeles was about to give them the show they had been pitching since 2008. All they knew, on that hillside, was hell yeah, and I choose you. That turned out to be enough. That turned out to be the only thing you need to take with you when you walk up a hill. Hell yeah, I choose you. Egypt will get pregnant in Morocco, technically. She will find out a week later. She will cry on the bathroom floor of the doctor's office in Atlanta. She will call Mike and say, "Are you sitting down?" And Mike will say, "I am sitting on the job site, baby. What is going on?" And Egypt will say, "You are going to be a father again." And Mike will sit on the edge of an unframed wall in a half-built house in Atlanta and put his head in his hands and weep, which is the one time he ever weeps in this entire book. And it counts. A Morocco baby, Egypt will say. She is a Morocco baby. No, Mike will say. She is ours. She is a wee baby. Wee baby. They say it like a joke for years afterward. At the dinner table, at the bathtub during bath time. Harper is our wee baby. Kendall, eye-rolling, preteen, mom. Please. Harper laughing. Mike, completely unbothered, grinning, saying it again. Wee baby, wee baby, wee baby. Chapter 14. Mike, babe. We got this. This is the chapter about Married to Real Estate. Not the show, exactly. Not the open house scenes and the renovations and the way the producers cut together the after photos with the before photos so you can see how far a kitchen has come. Everybody has seen that. This is the chapter about what is happening in the car between the wife and the husband on the way to those open houses. One scene. It is in the 3rd or 4th season. It is a real scene, shot for the show. You can watch it. A young couple in Atlanta is looking at a house. Patrice and Bryson. They have 3 kids, 9, 5, 2. They are a family. They have been married for about a decade. They are looking for a 5-bedroom in South Fulton, and they are trying to do it for under $500,000, which, in Atlanta, in that market, is not a big budget. Mike and Egypt take them through 2 houses. First house checks boxes but is over budget. Second house is under budget but the basement is unfinished, and the basement is a mess. The plumbing has been started and left. There are drywall scraps on the floor. Somebody has framed a half bathroom wrong, but the upstairs is right, and the location is right. And Mike, as Mike does, sees it. He sees the whole thing. The gentleman's club downstairs, the gym, the play area for the kids, the bar. He can already build it in his head. Egypt sees him see it. She turns to the young couple. "Y'all," she says, "give us a second." She pulls Mike aside. They stand by the car in the driveway. It is hot. The Atlanta sun is doing what the Atlanta sun does. She looks at her husband the way she looks at him when he is about to make her a promise. You think we can do it for 60? I think we can. With the basement. With the basement. Mike. Egypt. You sure? Babe, I got it. I see it. I see all of it. She stares at him for a second longer. She is, in that second, on TV. There is a camera crew 20 feet away. She does not care. She is, for that second, in a driveway with her husband, trusting him the way she has been trusting him since the day he stood up and told a security guard at Powerhouse that was his wife back there. She turns to Patrice and Bryson. She says, "We're going to write a contract. Come on." They get in the house. Mike and Egypt get in their car. Egypt is in the passenger seat. Mike is driving. Mike, who is still Mike, who cannot contain it when he is about to build something, who cannot sit still when he is about to cut into a wall, starts, with one hand on the wheel, doing a little dance in the driver's seat. Small dance, shoulder dance, Mike dance. Egypt, watching him out of the corner of her eye, sees it, rolls her eyes, laughs, and starts doing the dance with him. The two of them, in the car, on a street in South Fulton, dancing in their seat belts, because a contract is about to be signed, and a family is about to get a home. "He's doing a dance on it," she says to the producer in the back seat, who is laughing. "Oh," Mike says, "let me do the dance with you then." They both crack up. If you want to know, if you have come all this way through all these chapters to understand the thesis of this marriage, you can see it in that moment better than I can tell it to you. It is this. When one of them feels joy, the other one dances with it. It is not that Mike does the dance and Egypt watches. It is not that Egypt dances and Mike waits for her to finish. It is that the joy comes up in one of them, and the other one, within 2 seconds, is already in the joy with them, matched, mirror, hand finding hand in the dark. They have been doing the dance together for 21 years. Sometimes it is on a float at the Puerto Rican Day Parade. Sometimes it is in an extended stay hotel kitchen. Sometimes it is in the wedding suite. Sometimes it is on a hillside in Morocco. Sometimes it is in a kitchen in Atlanta with pizza on the counter. Sometimes it is in a car in South Fulton with a camera crew 20 feet back. It is always the same dance. It is always the same two people. They welcome the family home. "Welcome home," Mike says to Patrice and Bryson, opening the front door of their renovated house, Egypt next to him, the basement finished, the gentlemen's club ready, the gym outfitted, the bar stocked, the play area for the kids in the corner. Welcome home. Egypt, as Patrice and Bryson walk past them into their new life, reaches without looking for Mike's hand. Mike, without looking, takes it. 2 palms side by side, one dark and one less dark, fingers knit, one wedding band touching the other wedding band, and neither of them has to look. They have gotten that good at it. Chapter 15, Egypt. Spell my name right. There is one more thing to say about public life, and Egypt will say it. And it is the sentence that closes the book on any stranger who thought they were going to get under her skin. Spell my name right. It is her phrase for the commenters. It is her phrase for the trolls. It is her phrase for the woman in line at the grocery store who is whispering to her friend. It is her phrase for everybody, friend or stranger, who thinks they get to decide what a black woman on HGTV with a husband and 3 daughters is supposed to be shaped like, talk like, look like, live like. She does not care. She is not defensive. She is not wounded. She is, at this point in her life, on the other side of caring. I am from the media, she says, and she laughs when she says it. I have been in media for 20 years. You think you are the first person to come for me? Baby, you are not. Come on. What gets her? What still, after 2 decades, still gets her, though not the way it used to get her, is when the comments come for her body. She has had 3 children. She is not 22. She has been on television, in high definition, for more than a decade, and she will tell you, matter-of-factly, that women of color are built different. They carry weight different. They have curves men from other ethnicities are not always used to seeing, because media has, for a long time, wanted Black women to look Latina, and Latina women to look white, and white women to look like they have been starved for art. Egypt is built like Egypt. She has a rear end, and she is not going to apologize for the rear end, and she has hips, and she is not going to apologize for the hips. And if you want to come at her in a comment section, fine, come, but spell her name right. Mike does not tolerate it, by the way. That is important. The record needs to reflect this. Mike does not read the comments, as a rule, because Mike is not a man who goes looking for reasons to be mad. But when something comes across his phone, when something actually reaches him, when somebody has come for his wife in a particular way, Mike does not laugh it off. He will say, on a podcast, in that flat Mike voice that lets you know a joke has stopped being a joke, "Brother, that is just not it. That is my wife. I have 3 daughters. I have a mother. I have 3 women in my house plus 1 in my memory, and all of them are Black women, and you will not do that in my presence." The first time he said it publicly, Egypt reached over, put her hand on his thigh, and said, with a small smile, "Let your king support you." It is a thing she says to her girlfriends. It is a thing she has had to learn, because she is a strong woman, and strong women are not always good at being supported. Strong women have a hard time letting their men walk in front of them sometimes, because strong women have had to walk in front of themselves for so long. But Egypt has learned. She has learned to step back. She has learned to let Mike defend her. She has learned, on the HGTV set, at the family reunion, in the car, in a comment thread, to let her king, sometimes, do the swinging for her, because she trusts his swing, and because she has learned that a man wants, more than most things, to be allowed to show up for his wife in a way she does not always need but is willing to receive. "Let your king support you," she says to her girlfriends who are in relationships. "Let your king support you," she says to her daughters, who are still a little too young to understand. "Let your king support you," she says to the commenters, who do not deserve the advice but will get it anyway. And Mike, off to the side, grinning, shakes his head. "Your significant other," he says, for the 10,000th time in this marriage, "is not your competition." Epilogue. Mike and Egypt, what love means now. It is 2 a.m. in Atlanta. Mike and Egypt are downstairs. The kids are asleep. They have been asleep for hours. The dog is on the couch. The house, which is the house Mike and Egypt have built, not the show house, not the flip, but the house they live in, the one with Kendall's old art on the fridge and Harper's crayon on a wall, neither of them have bothered to paint over, is quiet. The pandemic is years behind them now. The show is in syndication in 82 countries. The The Dear Future Wifey podcast interview they sat for with Lotus Whitfield is somewhere on the internet for other people's marriages to find. The oldest of their daughters is nearly in high school. Kendall is in middle school. Harper, the Morocco baby, is in elementary. Egypt is in pajamas. She has a glass of water. She is leaning on the kitchen island. She is looking at her husband across it. Mike is in the t-shirt he wore to the job site today. Not because he has forgotten to change, but because he likes the smell of sawdust on himself at the end of a long day. They have been talking about something: taxes, a contractor, a summer trip, and the conversation has trailed off, and now they are just standing there, together, in the kitchen, looking at each other. He puts his phone down. "Come here." "Mike, we are not doing this." "Come here." "I have to be on a flight at 6. 5 minutes. Come here." She rolls her eyes. She comes. He does not even turn on music. He pulls her in. He puts one hand on the small of her back. The other hand finds hers. She lays her head on his chest. She does not ask what they are doing. She knows what they are doing. They are dancing. In the hum of the refrigerator, in the dark of the kitchen, in the 21st year of their love, with Kendall and Harper and their oldest asleep upstairs, and the dog on the couch and the smell of sawdust in her nose. 5 generations of her grandmothers watching from the other side, nodding. Mike's mama, wherever she is, watching too. The young lady he left at the bar at Powerhouse in 2004, God bless her wherever she is, has hopefully found her own good man by now. The receptionist at the jazz station at Temple University, who was not going to become a radio personality, has become one, and more than one. The man with no male role model has, it turns out, become the male role model for 3 daughters and a son-in-law he has not yet met. The 2 of them who decided, in a parked car in Manhattan, on the second date, that they were going to marry each other when the time came. They have married each other. Turns out, it is a verb. They sway. "Hell yeah," she whispers into his chest. "Hell yeah," he whispers back. They keep swaying. Love, if you have stayed with us this far, is this. Love is not the moment of the yes. Love is not the tattoo on the back. Love is not the wedding dress or the church or the great-grandmothers or the honeymoon or the show or the kids or the Morocco baby or the pandemic or the kitchen island or the hillside. Love is the dance in the kitchen at 2 a.m. in the 21st year. Love is the dance you are still doing when nobody is filming. Love is the 2 a.m. dance with no song on. Love is the hell yeah that gets quieter every decade, but never leaves your chest. Love is the man who kept on you until you stopped pretending you were seeing other people. Love is the woman who threw your CD in the trash and then 6 months later gave you her phone number at a parade because the Lord was not done with the story. Love is the kitchen island. Love is Chaka Khan. Love is the husband standing in the mudroom with sawdust in his hair, being told his turn is coming. Love is your turn coming. Love is not performing for the audience, because the audience is not your marriage. Love is your wife saying, into your shirt, in the dark, hell yeah. Call somebody you love tomorrow. Tell them, hell yeah. Let them tell you hell yeah back. That is the book. A final word. Thank you to Egypt, Sherrod, and Michael Jackson, the real ones, the Atlanta ones, the HGTV ones, the parents of Kendall and Harper and their oldest sister, for living a love story worth writing down. This book was not authorized by you. You are not responsible for its interpretations of your inner weather. I have drawn only on the material you have already put into the world, the podcasts you have sat for, the interviews you have given, the scenes from Married to Real Estate that the editors did not leave on the cutting room floor, the Dear Future Wifey Hour with Lotus Whitfield, the Love You More show with Wiley Mo J, the other rooms across the internet where you have, generously, let strangers watch you be yourselves, where I could not know, I softened, where I could quote, I quoted from the public record, where the emotional interior had to be imagined, I imagined carefully and with the respect due to people I have never met but have come to love, the way readers come to love couples who teach them how to try again. To the reader, thank you for the 2 hours. If at the end of them you want to call your mother, pick up your husband from the airport, forgive somebody you have been cold to, or fall in love again, then we have done what this series set out to do. If you are young and watching the older couples in your family and wondering if it is possible, the answer is yes. If you are tired and wondering if it is worth it, the answer is yes. If you have been hurt and you have sworn off love for 2 years and you are wondering if it is time to open the door again, the answer is only you know and only when you know, and it is worth the wait. Love is hard. Love is worth it. Love can last. Spell their names right.